Welcome, everybody, to Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker, back at you with another interactive class out of the secret library of the Connected Universe. Well, I am really excited for this one because I'm going to be reaching back here a lot throughout this episode because Portals to the Stars Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt is now out. That is my latest book. Just came out here October 29th, and I'm really excited. It was again, another passion project. I spent a lot of time, a lot of effort this past summer and into the early fall trying to get this thing out in time for all of you to enjoy this autumn and before the holidays. So I have links down below for all of that to go ahead and get the paperback edition, to get the Kindle edition. Audio is coming. So that is in post-production and should be out here before the end of November. I'll say that. I can't guarantee the exact day at this point. Just trying to get that out as soon as we can, because this production of the whole book was accelerated. I can't give you like a drop dead date on it because it's just going to be as soon as we possibly can. So before we get into everything, I do want to let those that are listening to the podcast version of this later, please join us every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time here on connecteduniverseportal.com. We also have a public live stream on my YouTube channel, the Mike Ricksecker YouTube channel. Officially, it's the Haunted Road Media channel, which is at M Ricksecker these days. But yeah, we do encourage you to join us out here every Wednesday night. Those that are members of the Connected Universe portal, of course, you get the after show that will be following this, and those members also get the sneak peek and behind the scenes videos, the monthly Q&A videos, exclusive articles, which actually those members, time travelers of the Connected Universe, get in your questions for the monthly Q&A, because I will be putting that out there tomorrow. It might go out Friday, but it will be coming out here very soon. Of course, you have the insider travel vlogs, including ancient Egypt, the American Southwest, Ireland. There's so much content out there with those. It's ridiculous. All of this and more, connecteduniverseportal.com. Also, big topic for this particular class, of course, is Stargates. And we do have the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour coming up in 2025. Yes, we are going back again every year. It's kind of a yearly thing, annual. So just head out to my website, mikericksecker.com. Go to the events and tours section. You'll find the information there for the Stargates tour. And of course, all of my whole event schedule, which we're starting with Conscious Life Expo in February. Then we've got Missouri Paracon, Atlanta, Lone Star Paracon, Parapsychon. I'm also sliding in a Portals to the Stars special presentation in there as well. So great to see a bunch of people down there in the house. In the portal, we should just call that. It's in the portal. So there's Michelle Brandenburg. Thank you very much, Michelle, for joining us again. There is Jen. Happy book release. Thank you, my love. We got Scarlett's in the house. Jenny is here with us as well. Tom McNicholas. Wonderful to see you all, and many more that are continuing to join. All right, let's go ahead and get into it this evening. So we are highlighting, of course, the new Portals to the Stars book, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. Again, this was really a passion project here, and it was one of those. So on the Haunted Road, here I am switching things up. On the Tom, your comment is still up here, man. Okay, bring that down. So on the Connected Universe portal, it's just about a half an hour long video that I just posted the other day for time travelers, for members of the Connected Universe portal, that just chapter by chapter we're kind of going through. Here's what's in the book. This is what you can expect when you get this thing. So it's really like kind of the exclusive sneak peek insiders. And this particular show is an hour, and we are going to go into some of these topics, but that was like really the exclusive sneak peek into the book. before before everything finally became active, live, released, all that sort of thing. Before it dropped. That's terminology these days, right? It dropped. So, but I do want to talk about this particular book and what happened here. And I even had a blog article the other day, kind of talking about the publishing process of this particular book, because um, I was writing a book called Energized Earth. So the whole idea, following Travels Through Time, which was the book that I released last August. Um, I had, while out there on tour in Egypt, had taken what I was originally calling Connecting the Universe. That was the name of the book. And while I was out there in Egypt, I became inspired that Connecting the Universe wasn't just a book. It was an entire series with many books in it. Okay, where do I start? Well, let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the root of it all, time. And so that's what Travels Through Time was. I did talk about portals and stargates within that particular book, but not in depth. It was kind of just glossing over it a little bit, because we were really talking about the nature of time. We got time slips, that sort of thing. So now that I was starting this new series, I'm thinking, okay, so how do I want to construct this series? Okay, if we started with time, let's go to the next step. Let's talk about the energy of the earth. And that magnetism rises up out of the Earth's core and all that. We'll talk about like ancient sites of power. We'll get into stone circles. We'll talk about what Tesla was trying to do with it, all of that sort of thing. So I started writing that. But then guess what? I was out in Egypt again. And so while I was out in Egypt this past April, I was just, it's the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. And we're visiting all these locations that have the Stargates within there. It's just plain as day. And here, I'll throw up, it's this set of hieroglyphs right here, reading from right to left, actually. Those are the Stargate symbol. The cartouche on the left is the cartouche of Seti, but the four glyphs before that are the classic Stargate symbols. In fact, that's what Mohammed Ibrahim uses for his tour company, which is Saba Tours, Saba meaning Stargate. And while we were out there, there were so many other discoveries that we made that I include in the book. There were so many deep discussions that we had about Stargates, the energy of the universe, and all of this, that I was like, I can't just only write about energized Earth. I need to do the Stargate book. And I had been thinking in my mind that was going to be the third book. But no, I decided I have a chapter in there in the book called Energized Earth. So it's a chapter now rather than a whole book, but it is still included in there, all the stuff that I had been working on. And this particular book gets into the nature of portals, what exactly they are, the different uses for them. Chapter 1, what is a Stargate? It breaks down what a Stargate is, what a portal is, and the different uses for these. And then it takes off from there. We talk about Stargates around the world. We talk about the uses of Earth energy. We talk about stone circles. So we're going to talk about some of those different things this evening. So, and there's Lisa Pandora Farms is in the house as well. Great to see you down there, Lisa. And Michelle, I'm happy you're finding this interesting. It's, again, a passion of mine, and I found it so interesting. I had to write a book, of course. So I have a couple of videos I'm going to share throughout the evening, but let's first, and those that have been with me for a while have seen this before, and I do kind of start off the book with this. It's in chapter 1. When we talk about what is a Stargate, what's a portal, we do talk about the X points in space, because these are portals that are naturally occurring, and we have to really start with something like this, because once you mention the word Stargate, and I've, over the last few years, especially when I'm doing just basic things like, hey, we got the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour coming up this year. I've received all kinds of backlash about, Stargates aren't real. It's just science fiction. It was a movie. It was a television show. All that is like, "Look, back off, back off, buddy." Because I mean, for one, right here, the word is Stargate. So, and I'll just break it down real simple here. So, reading from right to left, that first glyph there, folded sheet, that is the uh, Egyptian letter S. So the next symbol is a determinative, which is basically a symbol that helps you to define the word, and that's a star. The next symbol is another letter, that foot, that's a B. So we have two letters, SB, and then another determinative, gate. So SB. Now, the ancient Egyptians didn't have vowels, so we kind of supply them based on the Coptic language, which is descended from the ancient Egyptian language. So Saba, S-A-B-A. And then again, we have the determinatives there that are very, very plain and simple. Star, gate. Oh, I mean Stargate. Go figure that. So, so in our science, these X points, these portals, these are naturally occurring. They're naturally occurring out in space. And basically what's happening here is that the Earth's magnetic protection, the magnetic shield of our planet, where that hits with the solar wind in space, that area there can create these. Well, when NASA first discovered them 10, 12 years ago, they did say, yes, these are actually portals. And we're going to go ahead and call them X points. That's the name that we're going to use. Okay. And what's happening here is at this place where the solar wind hits the magnetosphere, these portals are opening and closing at all kinds of different intervals or different sizes, this sort of thing. Now, we sent up satellites. There's a set of 4 satellites that are monitoring this thing. And this is called the Magnetospheric Multiscale Mission. You'll look it up. It's on NASA's site. And there's a number of things that they're monitoring, but one of the things that they're monitoring are these X points. It's been up there since 2015, so 9 years, going on 10. And in all that time, even though they have been able to detect and measure these things, there's no predictive model for these portals. They open and close at random. They open at different sizes. And they can't tell you when they're going to open, how large they're going to open up to, and when they're going to close. They just do. So these are randomly occurring portals in space. Well, we have them down here on Earth too. And remember, this is an interaction between solar wind and the magnetism of the Earth, which basically goes all the way down to the ground, right? Which means we do also have naturally occurring portals in the sky, on the ground, pretty much anywhere. That's why when people talk about portals out in the wilderness, we had a whole show on this back during the summer. People stepping off the path and disappearing out into the wild, planes disappearing through portals, these sorts of things. And some people do come back, like in the Bermuda Triangle, Bruce Gernon coming back, and he has a fascinating story to tell. People that actually step out into something out in the wilderness, lose the path in 2 steps, like 2 steps, and they turn around, the path is gone. Where'd it go? Did they step out into something and get transported somewhere? Could have been somewhere else in the wilderness, to another point in time, to another dimension. These sorts of things do happen. So that is something that's naturally occurring. And what's kind of interesting and funny to me is the nomenclature that our scientists use. Even though they did recognize that, yes, these are naturally occurring portals, they've steered away from using that word. I think it's too metaphysical for them. So they started with saying the portals. Then they started using the term X points, which is really kind of cryptic. Now they are calling them these magnetic reconnections, is what they're calling them now. But here's what they actually describe these magnetic reconnections as, these X points, these portals. And these are the ones out in space. And actually, this is a little quote from the book, but it actually quotes them as well. I can't remember the exact scientist. I should have noted that here. You can find that in the book. So one of the more interesting findings from this still ongoing mission was the observation of, quote, magnetic reconnection in magnetic flux ropes, giant magnetic tubes which can form in the wake of previous magnetic reconnection events. And in Kelvin Helmholtz vortices, the same phenomena that are created when wind blows over water to create waves on the surface. So yeah, I find this really, really interesting and fascinating that they're saying, oh, yeah, these are like giant tubes. Wait a second. You mean giant tubes? So, like our whole imagery from science fiction, right? From, when we look at the movie Stargate or the television show Stargate, it was a tunnel, right? The movie Contact, it was a tunnel. Star Wars, hyperspace was a tunnel. All these different things. They use tunnel, which is basically like a long tube, right? And when we talk about the Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is Albert Einstein, Nathan Rosen, coming up with this idea that you to be able to connect two distant points in the universe, what we call a wormhole, and you have to fold over space and time, connect it with a tunnel, so it's much closer, and you're able to travel those distances. That's the whole premise of all of this, right? So here they are actually talking about describing exactly what's in our science fiction. Now, that said, I don't think that when we come across a portal, a naturally occurring portal, that it's going to be some circle standing out there in the woods, like, oh, hey, there's the tunnel to step through. You have a lot of these reports of, well, let me say this. I think the film Interstellar really did a wonderful job of depicting this, the giant sphere that they had hanging out there by Jupiter that they used to travel to the other galaxy. And the way they described this was like, a circle in 3D space. Like if we walk through a circle, the opening of the tunnel, circle is two-dimensional. Three-dimensional circle is a sphere. So it would actually be a sphere hanging out there. Well, you do hear about a lot of reports of spheres, really orbs, giant balls of lights, these sorts of things out in the wilderness. And so those could actually be the stargates or portals that people are walking into. And we're going to get a little bit more into that here in just a second. So, Pandora Farms. Lisa is asking, has anything been sent into these portals with tracking abilities along with cameras with the point of being able to return? So that's a great question. And actually, that's really kind of out of the movie Stargate, right? So when they first opened the thing, they sent a probe through. And to me, it's kind of funny because even though they weren't sure what this whole thing did, they suddenly have this board of the entire universe, apparently, where they are tracking the probe as it goes through the wormhole. And they're like, oh, yeah, there it is going across the universe. And it ends up at, this star system. And it's like, do you realize, and this would be what, using radio waves to send the signal back? Do you realize how long it takes just for like Voyager 1 to send a signal back for us to get that and know where it's at? Many hours actually. And so anything from across the galaxy like that, basically once it's outside the solar system, it would take a long time, but it's Hollywood, right? But to answer the question, yeah, so they have actually created a baby wormhole in the lab. This was done at Fermi Lab a couple of years ago, is when they published the reports. And within these reports, what they said was it was on the quantum level. that they created two tiny black holes and they connected them with a tunnel and they sent a message through. Now, the press that was covering this asked the scientists, well, is it big enough where you could send something like a dog through? And, the scientists kind of chuckled at it, like, no, 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 look, this is small. This is on the quantum level. We're nowhere near close to that yet. And I kind of laughed at it even further. Like, why are we talking about sending a dog through this thing? Wouldn't we, yes, like send a probe through that, right? Why would we send a living creature through it first? Yeah, it's totally, totally bizarre. But those are the questions that they were throwing them. So, yeah, this basically, okay. So we've been talking about portals, the Stargate aspect of this. Okay. The X points that we've been talking about in space, those are naturally occurring. The ones that people disappear through out in the wilderness. The ones like Bruce Gernon experienced in the Bermuda Triangle, where he suddenly like zipped ahead in time when he flew through it. And some of these have just, people and planes and things like that have gone missing. Those are naturally occurring. We don't know when and where they're going to open up. We don't know how big they're going to be. We don't know how long they're going to last. They happen and then things disappear and pass through it. Sometimes things return. Those are portals. What a Stargate is basically the ability for an intelligent being to harness the power and abilities of a portal to use for their own means. So basically, and again, it doesn't have to be human. We said intelligent beings. So this could be an extraterrestrial. This could be an entity in another dimension that have figured out how to harness what a portal is doing to be able to make it open and close at the intelligent being's will. We want this portal to open and go to here, and we want to open it right now or 10 minutes from now, and we want it to be this big, and we walk through it. So that's the difference between a portal and a Stargate. One is naturally occurring, very random in nature, and the Stargate is something that is actually controlled by the intelligent being, and they're able to make that portal open and close. Now, once you step through it, has pretty much like the same functionality. You're being whisked off to, could be to another place in the cosmos, another place on Earth, another dimension, another point in time. So, and I break that down. Chapter 1, Portals to the Stars. And I get into varying uses of it, what people could use, portals and stargates and things like that for, right? So on that theme of the wilderness, stepping out into something in the wilderness, being whisked away to somewhere, right? Earlier this spring, we had Ronnie LeBlanc from Expedition Bigfoot on the show, and we talked about some of these things. And I'm going to play a clip from him from our Edge of the Rabbit Hole interview with him, myself and Victoria. And I include a quote from this in the book, but then I went back to Ronnie and said, "Hey, Ronnie, can you expound on this a little bit, give some more detail?" And so he provided a nice contribution to the book that gets into this a little bit deeper. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this clip, but just know that this is kind of like the tip of the iceberg for other things that that he discusses in his piece in the book. Let's go ahead and play this. You think like you have a lot of these missing people, and sometimes when these missing people are found or they find their way back, they'll talk about, hey, I was on the path, heard a noise out in the woods, I took a step off the path, couldn't find what the noise was, turned around to get back on the path, and it was gone, and they're lost out in the woods. So do you think that some of these missing people cases are maybe they're stepping into, whether it's a portal or a vortex or whatever the mode of transportation is that maybe the Sasquatch is using? Do you think they're stepping into something like that?
Yeah, I do. I think there's, the Algonquin tribe talk about in Vermont that there's a specific boulder that if you step on it, you're going somewhere. And so they're talking about it being this portal. And I think that's where some of these reports where people are going into areas and they're having rocks thrown at them, or they're having these Bigfoot encounters, is they could be protecting people from going into these spots where you're walking in through a portal or something like this. Because you just have these incredible stories where people are there 1 minute and they're completely gone.
Yeah.
I mean, David Pilates' work, Missing 411,
Right.
terrifying stuff when you start realizing and reading about how people are just gone and no trace. Like what is taking them, where are they going?
Yeah. So really appreciate Ronnie there, his comments there, and then the piece that he provided for the book. So I do have a handful of contributors for this book, and I've done that with each of my last several books. So Ronnie contributed to this one, Dr. Heather Lynn, Amy Wayne from Amy's Crypt. She chimes in on the Hoyobachi Forest. Dr. Heather Lynn chimes in on the Shining Ones when we get into stuff about Atlantis. And then QHHT healer Catherine Swin, who came on the last Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, and she provided a piece from one of her regression sessions, where basically, she puts somebody under hypnosis and you visit a past life. It's part of the whole thing. There's a lot of different pieces and parts to that. And this particular person, who is also a fellow QHHT healer, had an experience in a life as a Sasquatch, which was really interesting. And in this particular life, this Sasquatch was using portals. And so this became, I provided, with everybody signing off on it, a transcript of part of that session where she, as the Sasquatch, was using this portal to be able to move from their homeworld, which was like an inner Earth, to regular Earth, to our place here. And it was really kind of interesting because it got into this idea that the portal wasn't quite working right. Something had gone wrong, and it actually had to do, part of it had to do with the intention that was set. So yeah, it's really a fascinating type of read. And I'm not, those that have been following me for a while know that I'm not a big Sasquatch guy. It's not something that I usually talk about. Yeah, I covered it in Alaska's Mysterious Triangle because, there are a number of cryptid sightings up there, Sasquatch sightings, hairy man, Bigfoot, this sort of thing. So I did cover it there, but it's not like I don't go out into the woods back here. I don't go squatching, right? It's not really my thing. It's like, we'll talk about it here on the channel occasionally, because it's all connected, but it's not my primary focus. Yet here, we have a substantial, significant piece on it. And one of the ideas, there's really two camps. That you have Sasquatch that are primates that have kind of hung around, haven't quite gone extinct, and are out there in some small pockets. And so you have that camp, and then you have a camp which says, well, we believe that they're actually interdimensional beings, because some of these Sasquatch have been seen where there's like these beams of light, or there's balls of light. And this is where I start getting into the idea of, maybe some of these balls of light, these light orbs, are actually portals. Not all. Okay. It's kind of like, when I talk about shadow people, hey, okay, what's a shadow person? People want like one single answer. It's like, no. There's many answers to this. There's many different things that are going on. So this is one possibility. So the idea that some of these orbs are spirits and that sort of thing, that's kind of something that we've been talking about for decades, right? some of these things are, and we talked about this with the other week with Hinsdale House, the mysterious lights in the woods, that you had these little pinpricks of light, but started off as this giant ball, right? That was maybe fairies, right? But then you have these other balls of light, ball lightning, plasma events, this sort of thing that could be, like we were talking about before, could actually be the portal itself in spherical form. And so those that are seen with the Sasquatch, if they are actually interdimensional beings, maybe that's their Stargate to move between worlds. So we dive into that sort of stuff within the book as well. Let me see. Well, thank you, Scarlett. This episode was incredible. I appreciate that. Tom, let's see. He says, can a portal or wormhole close when in transport? Scary. I'll let you go first. Well, that's it. That is a risk that you would have to take, right? The idea, and maybe that's why some of these ancient civilizations came up with the technology for creating what we call a Stargate. Like I said, that's the ability for an intelligent being to be able to open and close it at their will and basically designate where it's going to go. Because they probably thought of that time, like, okay, this thing is opening. We could step into it, and maybe they lost some of their buddies going into it before and never saw them again. We don't know where it's going. We don't know when it's going to close. Maybe they did get lost in transit, that sort of thing. So those randomly occurring ones, would probably be very scary. But the actual Stargate ones, the ones that they were able to control, then that would probably be a little bit safer. So mentioned a few times here, this idea that the ancients have or had figured out a way to harness that and create their own Stargates to be able to move through at will. And we see all over the world symbolism of portals. When we go to the American Southwest or other places, this one's from Chaco Canyon, which is why I say American Southwest. That spiral symbol, which the indigenous tribes have said, that's a symbol of a portal. Sardinia is another place where we see it. We see it in ancient Egypt. We see it in Sri Lanka. We see it in Ireland. We see it everywhere. I could rattle off 10 other places where we find that spiral at. And the indigenous tribes tell us these were the portals. Now, you have traditional academia say, well, they were, we're not listening to the indigenous tribes saying that they were portals. That's too metaphysical. That's too out there. That's too woo-woo, right? Can't listen to that. So if it wasn't a portal, what was? And they come up with their own ideas, like, well, and this is ridiculous. So take a look at this spiral, right? It's a migration pattern. Say what? Who migrates in a spiral? Right? Hey, we need to head south for the winter. So let's walk around in these circles, expanding little by little, but it makes no sense. We need to go there for the winter. We're going that way for the winter. It's a spiral is great for crime scene investigation. When I was doing my mystery writing, I have a whole bunch of books on crime scene investigation, and they had the grid pattern and they had the spiral to investigate the areas. They're not investigating a crime scene. Another one was water. Well, the ancient symbol for water is a jagged line, and we see that again in all kinds of different cultures, a jagged line representative of water. And I don't understand why they don't recognize that this is actually a symbol for the energy of the land, of the portals, like the indigenous tribes are saying. You go to some of these places like Chaco Canyon, and they have the symbols of the star people using the portals, and that's their stories. In fact, when Jen and I were at Boca Negra here earlier this year, and she's the one that actually knows, hey, there's a spiral over there. We had just come from It's Petroglyph National Monument, and we just come from the Boca Negra Mesa. And there's all kinds of spirals and other petroglyphs there. There's a whole map of the area that they had drawn, which was wonderful. And as we're driving out, because it was the end of the day, and the rangers were basically following us out. Jen was like, "Hey, there's the spiral up there." What? Oh, and we went back the next morning, and she kind of waited in the car, and I went up to where they were at. And it's just a short, maybe 20 feet, and it kind of goes up this like little slope right on the canyon wall. And right at the bottom, you have your star people, and literally one of them is like a star, and there's a face in it, and you have these other beings that are next to it. Like, cool, there's your star people. Go up a little ways, and then there's this snake that's on the stone. Now, the snake was the ancient symbol for energy. And you see this in a lot of different cultures. Again, ancient Egypt, but there was a project in the 1970s and early 80s called the Dragon Project, and they called themselves that because of Chinese geomancy, where the dragon, large serpent, was the representation of energy. So you see this in all different cultures. So star people, snake, and then at the very top is your portal, your spiral. And it's very, very simple. It spells out a very quick and obvious story. Star people using the energy to go through the portal, and it's all in a line straight up. There you go. It's like you can't really get more obvious than that. It's like it's all right there. There's the story. Boom. Very simple. But there have been some like the Dragon Project, some of these others that have gone out to like the Dragon Project. Their main focus was on stone circles. So this is the Rollright stones, photo courtesy of Catherine Swin, and within these stones, they detected the swirling energy within the stone circle all the way to the middle. Now, why is it a spiral? Well, okay. So this energy is coming from the Earth's core, and as it's emanating forth through the Earth's mantle, the Earth's crust, it's a spiraling vortex energy. It's basically like a swirl. That's the 3D representation, is that swirling energy. And as it's rising through the mantle and the crust, it's interacting with different metals and minerals. Depending on the metal or mineral it interacts with and the quantity of it, it's going to create different localized electromagnetic fields. Well, again, swirling energy coming forth, maybe getting super energized by something else that's in the ground. And if you were to just slice that swirling energy, what do you have? You have the 2D representation of the three-dimensional swirl is the spiral. So it's almost kind of like the reverse of what we were talking about before. What's the three-dimensional representation of the circle? It's the sphere. What's the two-dimensional representation of the three-dimensional swirl? That's the spiral. So there you go. I'll get into the Egypt stuff in just a moment. Let me take a look at your comments here. So yeah, Scarlett's asking, are spirals a type of portal? So spirals are basically a representation of, yes, they represent the portal, but really they represent the energy of the portal. It's that spiraling, swirling energy. And that is essentially what makes up the portal. And yes, the symbols are also on the pottery. I've shown in the past a lot of that spiral symbolism that's on the pottery. And there's one, and I include several within the book. There's one that's in the Nubian Museum at Aswan that's actually the spiral on a cosmic egg. Now, the cosmic egg is important because that is a symbol of creation, the creation of the universe. So, you're talking about that spiraling energy that's there at creation. So it's all a part of the connected universe. So DKL asking here, portal connection to shadow people. So when it comes to shadow people, I mean, it really depends on what type of entity that we are talking about. Because shadow people can be a lot of different things. They can be a human spirit that manifests as trying to manifest as an apparition, but comes off as a shadow. We could be talking about interdimensional beings. We could be talking about extraterrestrials. We could be talking about astral projections, time slips, all kinds of different things. So if they are something like an interdimensional being or an extraterrestrial, sure, they could be using a portal or something like that to enter into our world. Yeah, that is definitely on the table. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and play we're going to get into Egypt here. So we showed a little bit about the glyphs, but when we were there, I'm going to show a clip from Edfu first because it shows some different types of Stargate symbolism. Now, Edfu itself doesn't actually have a Stargate. At Abydos, Dendara, Karnak, Luxor, others, we see this symbolism here next to doorways, and actually doorways into rooms, gateways into the temple itself, that sort of thing, which is saying this is the Stargate or this is the Stargate room. With Edfu, you don't have that. You have it within the text. And the text there at Edfu, a lot of it is the creation text. It's basically the story of Atlantis, or what the Egyptians called the homeland of the primeval ones. And I get really deep into this at the end of the book, the connections between ancient Egypt and Atlantis. I'm going to go ahead and play this clip, kind of showing some of the Stargate symbolism that's there at Edfu. So it's within the story of Edfu.
Because it's plural.
It's plural, yes, because you have the three strikes here, so that makes it plural. So this would be Stargates inside here. So we'll see that on one of the walls inside too, the representation of Stargates. I think the one inside is Great Stargate is what we'll see, if I recall correctly. Yeah. But this is Stargates here as we go in. Yep. Okay, just to note, because we're coming in from outside, walking in here, headed toward the significant part of the text. And we see another Stargate right here. This is just a singular one, though. So I wasn't even looking for this one. I was looking for a Great Stargate somewhere in here. I think it's further down there. But we have one Stargate here. We have multiple Stargates here. And Ahmed is saying that very well could mean 100. So 100 Stargates in the story here. So rather than being on the gates, it's part of the story here in the Edfu texts. Yeah, so that's 100 Stargates. And I had to confirm that, do some additional research when I came back. So yeah, the one line of text up top was talking about, a specific Stargate, and then below it was talking about this location that has 100 Stargates. Now, again, the text here on the wall, a lot of it, these are what they call the Edfu building texts. Part of it's a creation story of the Egyptian culture coming out of the Great Cataclysm. Yes, another culture talking about a Great Cataclysm. Nearly every culture in the world talks about the Great Cataclysm. It's always there, and so Egypt is no different. And so, part of the story there is that. Part of the story there is talking about the creation of the temples and these sorts of things. So probably not going to dive too deep really into the Atlantis aspect of it here tonight. We've done a lot of that in the past, but I guess here's the thing to really note about that is just the dating of this. I've even seen some recent articles talking about the dating of Atlantis, and they always kind of try to pin it toward the era of Plato or Solon, or within almost like within 1,000 years there. So a lot of people try to point toward like Santorini just because of the shape of the island. There's a volcano in the middle. There was a massive volcano that went off and just decimated not only that island but the entire region and all that. That was around 1600 BC. But and they try to say, oh, this is what Plato was talking about. Well, no. Look at what actually Plato talks about. So Plato got the story from Solon, right? And it's not just him talking about it. Like even Plutarch said, yeah, Plato got the story from Solon. Well, where'd Solon get it from? So Solon was 600 BC. Okay. He went on a pilgrimage to Egypt, and he studied at the Temple of Sais. He studied in Heliopolis, and he brought back with him from the priests and the scribes there the story of Atlantis. Now, again, it was not called Atlantis. The Greeks ended up calling it Atlantis. They basically renamed the homeland of the primeval ones to Atlantis, just the same way that they renamed Kemet to Egypt, the same way that they renamed Waset to Thebes, which when the Arabs took control, they called it Luxor. So there's a lot of renaming going on here. It was the homeland of the primeval ones. And the priests there at Sais told Solon, look, this incident happened 9,000 years ago. 9,000 years before Solon showed up. So we're talking 9,600 BC. So this is like right at the end of the Younger Dryas era, okay? Which is far before the volcano of Santorini went off. And yeah, people kind of really, really missed that whole dating aspect of it. So this happened in the far, far distant past. And it's unfortunate that people kind of miss that point. And they also try to say, well, it's just a fanciful myth by Plato. What's interesting, though, is if this was just a myth by Plato, and he's telling this to the other learned individuals of his era, the other philosophers, he would have been insulting them the entire time, because part of the story that came back from Solon was Sanchis, who was the priest there, telling Solon that, hey, you Greeks are like children. You don't really know world history. We've been keeping track of this stuff for a long time. We've been writing it down, and your little cataclysm that you're talking about over here, that is just one of many. There have been many, many cataclysms over the millennia, and you guys don't know jack. It's really what Sanchis was telling Solon. So I had a lot of fun with that chapter in the book, kind of like really diving into all of that. So that was some of the Stargate symbolism there at Edfu. So Matt B83, what are the chances of other universes? So that's an interesting question, because, and this kind of gets into a little bit with Travels Through Time, the book that I released last year. The first of the Connecting the Universe series, Portals to the Stars, is the second. And so the idea that like every action that we create spawns off another universe, I'm not on board with. So like me taking a sip of coffee here, that suddenly spawned off another universe? No. Sorry. And then some people try to, kind of try to qualify it. I said, well, it's a big decision, where other universes will be created. Well, okay. Well, what's a big decision for one person might be a small one for another person. So how do you differentiate? Such as a person walks across the street. Not a big deal. Not a big decision whatsoever. But let's say that there was a car coming down the street and they had to brake and slow down for that person, which in turn, because it threw off their timing, they got into an accident, or maybe they avoided an accident further down the street. So it wasn't a big deal for that person crossing the street, but it was a big deal for that person driving the car. So how do you make that decision? That is not to say that there aren't other universes out there. Our current, I should say, many of our current physicists, not all of them, because they disagree on stuff. But if you read like Michio Kaku and physicists like that, and Michio is one of the guys that came up with string theory here. There is a prevailing theory that there are many physical universes out there, just like this same way that there are many. Our planet is in solar system. There are many solar systems within our galaxy. There are many galaxies within our universe. There may be many universes within whatever is the next step up, right? So the idea that there are these other universes out there that have they might have other chemical makeup, other nuclear properties, these other different things that happen with them. And our universe kind of hit that nice Goldilocks zone where some of these others might spin up real quick and burn out real quick and just die. Some of them may not have enough energy to really get going and just never really start. But we are one that that has been able to survive for as long as we have. Now, some of those physicists, when we're talking like wormholes and these sorts of things, have also postulated that some of these portals and wormholes and stargates might not just take us to, and we've talked about, at the beginning of this, another place on Earth, another dimension, another point in time, another place in the universe. Some have postulated that that wormhole might take us to another universe entirely, like jumping from or connecting from this universe or bubble. And they kind of liken it to like a bubble universe to one of these other bubbles, a whole other universe entirely, which might really be a shock to our system. If there are other physical properties in one of those other universes, we might not survive it. All right, Tom, if you look at a water whirlpool, it's obvious that's only one direction. Where do you think that energy is stored? Could there be a reverse whirlpool somewhere that releases that energy? So yeah, it depends on what part of the planet. Now, I can sit here in my sink and make a whirlpool, switch in two different directions. But the more naturally occurring ones, it's that whole, not to be crass, but you flush a toilet here, the whirlpool is in one direction. You flush a toilet in Australia, spins in another direction. So, and that really has to do with our location on the planet. All right. So, and FB, really enjoying this. The book is fantastic so far. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. All right. So let me go ahead and play this other clip here from Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. This is on Dendera. And this is Mohammed telling his story of now the Dendera Stargate symbolism. Most of it that's there is a little bit different, but it's really a cool little story, and it's a different type of Stargate. It tells another type of story of us interacting with stars. You'll see.
One day, I was here with a big group. And sometimes I don't like big groups. Too much questions.
Standing questions.
Yes. So I send them inside. Try to give myself 5 minutes free time. So I was putting my hand like this, and because they asked me, imagine if you have 70 people or 80, it's a headache, non-stop for 12 days. Okay. So I was doing this. But the hinges were rusted at the time, so it was doing this sound. So that was relaxing for a time. And then I closed the door. I don't know what happened to do this. I saw these symbols. A gate with some unknown symbols, or let's say unexplained symbols, with stars. And there is another one, different number of stars. Different figure here and different figure there. And what made me to make sure that this is the Stargate, here is the word written Stargate in the middle. Okay? This one is very also informative. We can see a scarab above the head. To cross, you will have a new beginning. So I told myself, what about the other gate? So I went to the other gate and I found two more. Also different symbols and different number of stars. So the four of them are completely different. Okay, not identical. Even the side symbols. So last year I was explaining this story exactly to Mike and the other group, and Mike told me, what about looking to the other side? I was telling this story for 7 years without asking this question, what about the other side? So we found more stargates in this side and that side. So we found 4 here and 4 in the other side. So we found 8 new stargates. This is the address. This is where you will go, okay? Or this is the name of the place, or the name of the way.
And I didn't get a good recording of Muhammad talking about it as we were walking up the stairs to get up here. But on the right-hand side, as you're walking up, there's a procession of people with what we would call offerings and other items that they're bringing up here. And then on the left-hand side, there's a procession coming back down. So, at least for me, this is indicative of we are bringing things to the Stargate. We're going to bring things to pass through the Stargate, perform that ceremony. And then, of course, when it's all done, you come back down.
Yeah, so that was really fun. 2 years ago, well, actually a year and a half ago when we were there in February 2023, where like Mohammed was saying, he's telling the story. He's like, yeah, here are these different stories. Hey, what about over there? And it kept going, and there's stuff on the other side. And yeah, up top, it actually has the traditional Stargate symbol, but then you have these gates with the stars over top, different numbers and different symbols within. Now, the mystery is still what that symbolism truly means. Muhammad was calling it an address of some place that you might go, or the gate that it's talking about, and that could very well be. So we're still in the process of trying to interpret all that. That is something, that interpretation is not in the book. If I had waited for us to unlock that, the book probably wouldn't be out for years. So once we get that unlocked, that will be a publication later on down the road. But I do talk about that in the book, and there's the video right there. But yeah, Dendara has so much going on with that. So that's on the roof. You have to, they showed the procession up the stairs to the roof. You have that Stargate room. On the ceiling is the representation of Newt, who is the, basically is the representation of the sky. And then in the other corner on the roof is the Dendara zodiac, which is more than just a zodiac. It's like a full star chart to all kinds of different locations across the cosmos. So there's so much there up on that roof of the temple at Dendara, Hathor's temple, that is representative of space, the sky, other places in the universe, and these sorts of things. So we're getting toward the end. This is kind of really flown by here. So Scarlett had mentioned, I find it possible to have other universes or maybe repeated universes, reboots. So this is something that I do talk about a bit in Travels Through Time. I do mention it, of course, here in Portals to the Stars, that idea of constant recycling and renewal. And this was, of course, a part of the Egyptian culture as well. The symbol of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, is, that's our oldest alchemical symbol. It originated in Egypt. The first place that we find it is actually on the burial shrine of King Tut. This one is the Theodoros Pelikanos illustration from the 1400s, which is actually a copy from an older alchemical tract that was written by Synesius from it's like 370, 380 AD. But again, the symbol actually predates all of that. And we see it in different tombs all throughout, like the Valley of the Kings. Because one of the ideas, of course, they wanted their king his soul to be renewed, wanted to be recycled, to come back. And then there's also the idea of the renewal and recycling of the earth and the renewal and recycling of the universe. And so this was something I really dove deep into, and travels through time. I did revisit it a bit here in Portals to the Stars because it remains relevant. This was a philosophy by the ancients that we see permeating all throughout their cultures, that there was this, even just basic in nature, something dies, disintegrates into the ground, and then is renewed in life. So you could take like a tree or something like that, and it will eventually die and decay into the ground, and then new life is born out of that. So even our current solar system that we are in right now, this is not our first go around. We were born out of another star system. We were there. When we talk about extraterrestrials and other life forms and things like this from other planets, and it's like what ended up forming up into Earth right now was likely another planet in a previous incarnation, like physically, boom, previous incarnation from a previous planet that may have housed life. That could be why we have life on this planet now, is because there was life on that other planet before that system was annihilated and this one was born. So again, a constant recycling and renewing. So all right, gonna have to wrap it up here. I didn't get to everything that I wanted to talk about because I did want to get into like some of this circular symbolism that we see in Sardinia. I did mention the red spirals, but we see in the Narage, the structures that are there, that symbolism. I was going to revisit a little bit on Hinsdale House. Never got around to that, but all of that stuff and more is in the book. Again, Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. I do have the links in the description so that you can grab that copy, whether you want paperback, Kindle. The audiobook, again, will be out later in November by all estimations. Just trying to get that, the post-production done on that as quickly as possible and get that into, not to say your hands, but you don't really put an audiobook in your hands unless you count your phone or whatever device you're listening on. So for those that are part of the Connected Universe portal, our time travelers there, our members, hang on. We will have the after show. And there's Jen. Yes, but it will be in the after show. This is true. We'll talk about those things in the after show. Diana Dawn, real quick. Do you think that a lightning strike could open a portal? I was close to one on 12/21/2012 and then found myself suddenly high up in the night sky, 27,000 miles up in a euphoric state of mind. So, yeah, there's a interesting story real quick. Stonehenge, with this legend of the Stonehenge hippies, took place in the early 1970s when you used to be able to walk up to Stonehenge and camp out there. And once it became a big tourist attraction, you couldn't do that anymore. Young group of people that were up there camping out. And about 2 a.m., a big storm rolled in. There was a police officer who was walking by at the time. There was a local farmer, and they reported this sky lighting up blue, lightning hitting one of the stones there at Stonehenge, and yeah, everything just became like really blue. You heard the cries of the young adults, and then nothing. The police officer and the farmer ran up there, and these young adults were completely gone. It's kind of passed off as an urban legend these days, but I have used that story before to show that, hey, these stone circles, have an energy. They were harnessing the energy of the ground. Talk about an energized earth within Portals to the Stars. Where they were talking Royal Red Stones, Avebury, Drombeg Stone Circle in Ireland, all these different stone circles. They were harnessing an energy of the ground for different purposes. Whether it was a Stargate or a portal or entering into altered states of consciousness or for healing purposes and these sorts of things. So, yeah, all right. Time travelers, we will see you in the after show. Everybody else, on the public side. Have a great night. And until next time, time really exists.